Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. The Indian Space Research Organisation has launched the country's first analog space mission in Leh, Ladakh. The mission has been developed by a partnership of the Human Space Flight Centre ISRO, the Akash Space Studio, the University of Ladakh and IIT Bombay. It is being supported by the Ladakh Autonomous Hill Developmental Council. In a social media post, ISRO said the mission will simulate life in an interplanetary habitat to tackle the challenges of a base station beyond Earth. It will also allow scientists to study the physical and mental challenges faced by humans in space, which will help in preparing astronauts for long-duration space explorations. Now, the move assumes significance as India is preparing to firm up its presence in space with its Gaganyaan mission, the Bhatia Antariksh Station, and also the mission to send a human to the moon by 2040. So, we'll talk about the larger objectives of the analog space mission, what all does it include, why is it being done in Ladakh and so on, with two special guests who joined me on the program. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. W. Selvamurthy, President, Amity Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation. He's also former Chief Controller R&D, DRDO. Dr. Selvamurthy, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to Sansad TV. Also pleased to welcome Dr. G. Raju, Professor, Department of Aerospace, Jain University, Bengaluru, and former Project Director, ISRO. Dr. Raju, welcome to the program as well. In fact, let me begin the program today with you. The opening remarks from you about what analog space mission is. Usually we've heard and we talk about space missions, but tell us about what is an analog space mission and in context of India, how significant is it?
Yeah, see, analog space, analog is like a simulation of space. Actually here, the focus is more on, for example, if you want to send a satellite up in space, you simulate the space conditions on Earth. Normally, all the satellites have to be qualified for space environment during launch vibrations, whether they can really withstand all the harsh environment while during launch as well as in orbit. For example, during launch, you'll have a lot of vibrations, acoustic effect and all that. And during primarily in the space, you'll undergo a lot of temperature variation, vacuum is there. So this is the kind of simulation that we do for the satellite. So in context with the current analog project, whatever we call it, new one, it's quite new to me in one way, but it's very interesting. I can connect that with my experience, what we have in context with developing a satellite on ground so that we simulate the space conditions. Here, to be particularly applicable for this analog mission, the main purpose, as I understand, is to simulate conditions of the moon and conditions of the Mars, for example. The purpose is to simulate the altitude, the temperature variations, and many other related parameters which are equivalent to the conditions on the moon as well as on Mars. So here, we are going to look at, for example, why we have chosen is why we have been able to choose this kind of a situation, site is because the soil on the surface of the moon as well as on the Mars are similar to what we have in Ladakh. So this is one of the very interesting features that we have found on the Ladakh. The lake, particularly the lake, is the place where the proposed lab is going to be located. And there is a main purpose is to simulate a chamber. You can see in some kind of a lab itself, particularly for human habitat. That means it is planned. It is planned, as I understand, for an astronaut to go inside that capsule on the ground, stay for 21 days, simulate the space conditions, observe what are all the problems or what are all the issues you may face before you practically embark upon a mission in space. For example, this is a very useful mission for Gaganyaan. So this is the overall profile of the expected results and why we are doing in my very words.
Right. Right, Dr. Raju. We'll elaborate further on the aims and objectives and some of the projects for which this analog mission is going to be extremely significant. I'll get in Dr. Selvamurthy as well into the discussion. Dr. Selvamurthy, you shared with us that you've visited Leh at least 100 times because there was a there is a DRDO laboratory and you were associated with the organization as well. Help us and our viewers understand why or in fact, what makes Ladakh best suited for India's first analog mission?
India, it's an aspirational India today. The Viksit Bharat in the offing, and the Honorable Prime Minister has given the vision to be a developed India by 2047. We need to achieve excellence in every domain. Space is one area where already the Indian Space Research Organization has built in that capability to build launch vehicles like SLV, ASLV, PSLV, GSLV, and Mars mission, lunar missions. We have executed 3 Chandrayaan missions. So these are all capabilities which have been built by ISRO over a period of time. But in this case, when you have to test an equipment in space environment, you cannot be going every time to space to test it. So you need an analogous or simulated space environment. So there is a necessity. Otherwise, what we have been doing, we used to go to the other space mission, space agencies like NASA or go to European Space Agency to get either it's a rover or it's any other equipment, subsystem, system of systems which is developed. So you need to have its validation in another country. So now India, looking at the roadmap of ISRO, we need to have our own testing grounds. So this is a test pad, not only for Gaganyaan, even for testing the various, terrestrial geology. If you want to test the landscape and the rocky terrains, snow terrains, so you can simulate whatever in the planetary situations which will exist, and you need to have a similar environment here. So that is why the Leh Ladakh is one such the place where it is terrestrial. If you see during summer, it will be all cold, dry desert. You will see only rocky terrains unless you go to the higher altitudes. So this Leh altitude is 3,500 meters, which is 11,500 feet altitude from sea level. It is that high. And then if you look at the terrain, it's a rocky terrain. So it's known as cold, dry desert. Because why dry? Because it is the humidity is very low there. So that is why, which is similar to Martian environment and similar to some of the portions of the lunar surface, which is similar to the terrestrial geology of this, like rocky terrain, snow terrain. So we have these, so that is one reason. The second reason is that it also needs to have a condition which is challenging, like psychological factors. If you have to do human factor simulation there, like isolation, monotony, separation from family, fear of the unknown, sensory deprivation. So all this is going to be there when a Gaganaut is going to be there inside a capsule, sitting there. He is going to be experiencing these psychological the challenges which one has to encounter. The other aspect is that when you establish Indian International Space Station, or when we participate in International Space Station, we will encounter similar things over there, the claustrophobic environment, then all the psychological factors which I mentioned. So this will be affecting their sleep rhythm. So if you have to study how the sleep-awake cycle will be changed, then you need to have a simulated environment. You can't do that every time going there to space station or to the space environment. So that is the necessity which now India is fulfilling as the first attempt in Ladakh. And this will be a capsule which will have an airlock chamber so that a person can go inside. It will have the life support systems. It will also have all the utility requirements in terms of sanitary requirements. Everything will be built in. So, and then there will be even it will be total power independent power supply, uninterrupted power supply, as it would exist in the International Space Station. So it will be an independent power supply which will be working all through. Then we will also have the regulation of the internal environment, like for example, humidity, temperature, and pressure. all this will be simulated to close to that various the planetary environment, whether it's lunar surface or it is Martian environment. Then we will also see whether we can cultivate vegetables. So in this capsule, there is also going to be a vegetable plant kept there to see the growth behavior. And so these are some of the requirements to simulate. So one side, the equipment testing, you need simulation. The other side, the human factors, if you are going to put a manned space mission, what are all the challenges, human factor challenges will be encountered. So that is why they have rightly chosen the Ladakh. Because in Amity University also, we have the same Mars analog station. We have carried out some experiments there in Ladakh. And it was in fact on 31st August, we had the first meeting of the congregation of scientists coming from different countries, and it was up to 7th September. So 31st August to 7th September, Amity University, Mumbai, Maharashtra, they organized this event. So we have a big focus in Amity as well on Amity Space Mission. We just to align with the Indian Space Mission. So we have focused attention in research and development, capacity building, academic activities like giving degrees and churning out the future,
Right.
The global citizens to meet the requirements of space science and technology. We have an Amity Institute of Space Science and Technology. So all this is to give a focus that how do we contribute to the national space mission. So this analog, the ISRO's initiative is commendable, which is a requirement and essential requirement for our long-term programs, whether it is International Space Station or Gaganyaan, which is the manned space mission, and also for other space mission to check the payloads, whether it will work in those conditions. So you can test it. Or you want to test a rover, whether it will operate in such a terrain. So we need such kind of analogous or simulated environment. So Teena, that is the requirement, and Ladakh is the right place to do that.
What we understand, sir, and how you explained to us is that this mission is going to replicate some of the conditions and some of the challenges that our astronauts will face in the extreme challenges of the celestial bodies. But at the same time, tell us about some of the important projects of ISRO that this mission is going to support. One of them, we believe, is the Gaganyaan mission. But what are some of the other projects also that this mission is going to extremely be of help?
The Gaganyaan mission is going to be a very prestigious, challenging, the first manned flight to space. So that is why a lot of challenges, human factor challenges. One would be when the person gets into the spacecraft, and then when it moves up, the gravitational pull till such time it moves out of the Earth orbit. Then, having gone out of this, then you have a low gravity situation. So in the hypogravity situation, a lot of physiological challenges happen. Like, for example, your cardiovascular system, the hemodynamics, your blood pressure, your blood movement, circulation is also gravity based. And then it is pumping against the gravity to the brain. Heart is pumping against gravity to the brain.
Right.
But when the gravity is not there, is going to be a lot of challenges for blood rushing into the cerebral area, which is brain area. And so this is one. The second is your musculoskeletal system, the muscles, bones, and joints. It is dependent again on gravity. So here, once the gravity situation is not there, depending on the duration of stay, there could be even muscular atrophy. And also there is cardiovascular deconditioning on one side, then muscular loss, muscle loss, as well as you will find even the muscle tone is lost. You would see some of the astronauts being brought on a stretcher when they are rescued from the rescue vehicle, because all the muscles have lost their the strength. So this is yet another challenge, human factor challenge, when a person goes and stays in the International Space Station, or if he's going to stay in other planets like Moon or Mars when it happens. So this is another challenge. The other one is the circadian rhythm. Your body functions are entrained to solar cues. Like during daytime, if you measure your heart rate, it just keeps rising. The lowest at the early morning, maybe around 4 a.m., 5 a.m. It keeps rising. Then again, after about 2 p.m., it comes down. So there is a cycle. It's known as circadian rhythm or biorhythm. All your biological or physiological functions have a rhythmicity depending entering to solar periodicity. But when it is not there, either it will be so bright all the time, sun would be there in that. So how would the sleep behavior would be changed? Because your melatonin secretion, which influences your sleep and your sleep onset, the quality of sleep. So this is another important function of your biological rhythm, which is sleep-awake cycle.
Right.
This would be affected. And then based on this, your cognitive abilities like concentration, memory, learning efficiency, psychomotor performance, eye-hand coordination, dexterity, all this would also change because he has to do operations there. He will be floating in the space capsule. So how would, this is yet another human factor challenge.
Right.
Then when you come to food, the food has to be in such a way that it should be easily digestible because there is no physical activity. And the food packet in which you are giving, how do you manage? So many packets cannot be floating around in the capsule, the crew capsule. So either edible packaging has to be there so that the person eats the packaging as well. So otherwise you have to have a disposal system. Then you also need to see that how do you grow vegetables? Is it possible for vegetables to be grown there? So in this analog experiment, we are also going to have hydroponics. Hydroponics means it doesn't need to have soil. Just put in the water so the plants can grow. So it is known as hydroponics or aeroponics. But in this particular experiment, they have put hydroponics. Then the second is you have to come out of the capsule and then do extravehicular activities. So like if you are staying inside the space station or you are staying inside a space capsule, you may have to come out like the man who walked on the moon. So you will have to do activities. So we have kept around this capsule, the ISRO has kept a space, extravehicular space for simulating as if he's coming out of the capsule and doing maneuvers, operations in space environment.
Certainly, I think that's the interesting part of this one because all this while we've been talking about traveling to space, but this one is about a habitat and the kind of conditions that are being created. So some of those simulating conditions about which Dr. Selvamurthy has spoken. I'm also curious to know, Dr. Selvamurthy, from you that the concept of analog missions emerged during the Apollo program. This is our first analog mission, but interestingly, the space exploration ambitions over the years have evolved, and in many ways. How have the analog missions also evolved over the years to, keeping in view the nature, the desire, the ambition, and the duration of space exploration programs?
Yes, it's a very good question because the aspirational India, as I said, that we are looking at over a period of time, we should be in a leadership role in space science and technology as well. In every domain, we want to have excellence. So if that has to be there, then you have to build all capabilities, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which our Honorable Prime Minister keeps talking about. So you need to be self-sufficient in every technology. Why should we go to test an equipment in a simulated condition in another country? So this is actually the purpose of creating this is going to be a long term. This is only the beginning of the first activity of analog, the space station which has been created in Ladakh, but it will keep expanding its domains. So in this first, we are keeping two things. One is to test the equipments, systems, subsystems, components, if it has to be tested in such a conditions, or even systems like rover, which is to be tested. So one side, the equipment testing. The other side, we are also going to have the human factors testing inside, which I mentioned earlier. So these are the two objectives. And over a period of time, this will also expand because our evolution of ISRO, as I mentioned, in different areas. But the roadmap, future roadmap, if you see, actually Honorable Prime Minister himself reviewed the roadmap of ISRO for the next up to 2050.
Subscribe
The
to
whole,
our
what are the
YouTube
plans,
channel.
how many missions are
And
going to
don't
be
forget
launched.
to
So
like
all
and
this
share
requires
them.
simulation capability. That is why this analog space station is very, very important, in which, like, for example, when you go to, we have planned to monitor the sun, for example. So you have the Aditya L1, which is put there. And similarly, we may have interplanetary travel, that you may go to one like moon, lunar surface, and from there you will launch to another planet. So for all this capability, you need the simulation. Like, for example, when you test an equipment in different environment, you have a simulated chambers, heat, cold, all the stress you want to give to test it. So like this, even to test the equipment for space, this kind of test facility is an essential requirement. And I'm happy that Government of India has taken the right step, because every time, depending on another country, even for testing your systems or subsystems or payloads, it will be very, very challenging. And we want to create a self-reliance in this aspect as well. And also the present experiment, there is only one astronaut crew. You can say Gaganaut, simulated analogous Gaganaut crew inside, one person. And they will be monitored. The whole thing will be circadian lighting would be there inside. That means we will time it in such a way that if you want to have 12-hour light, 12-hour darkness, then you can simulate. So you have a circadian lighting system inside, which will simulate as if in the in that planet, that solar periodicity. You can vary that. You can time it in such a way whether you want to have 12, 12, or you want to have 10 plus 14. So you can adjust those timing so that the lights will automatically come on at that time. So this is yet another facility. Then I said hydroponics, which is there to test the behavior of the plant. So if you have to grow vegetables in International Space Station or in other planets, so how does the callus of a plant will grow? Shoot length, root length, and the arborization, how will it happen? Plant physiology, how will it change? All this will be studied even in this experiment. That's why the hydroponics, which is there inside this capsule of the first experiment of the ISRO's analog space station, that we have all this available. In addition, we'll be looking at the anxiety, the psychological behavioral changes in the claustrophobic environment, and with all those challenges which I mentioned, sensory deprivation, monotony, isolation, fear of the unknown, all this will be impinging. So how does this individual will behave? It may not be exactly like space, but this is a simulated space environment, or analogous. Functionally, it is similar. Analogous means functionally similar to the space environment.
You're right. So while it's a significant step bolstering our efforts towards our explorations and future projects that are lined up, but sir, it's a temporary facility. It's the mission is only for 21 days. Do we also intend to have a more permanent one in nature, or similar to what's there in NASA? And according to you, what would be the best suited sites which are available within India? One, of course, we know is Ladakh, but what are the other sites that could probably be used for future analog missions?
You can also do it in desert, because some of the planets have got a desert-like environment with all these sand dunes, and those type of the planets are also existing. So one can be in desert where high temperatures and others will be simulated. Here, it's mainly there's a first step. This is a small capsule has been created for one man. But then you can have a bigger one. If in International Space Station, some 10 people are going to work. So you need to create that kind of facility there, including their sanitary requirements and also all the hygiene requirements. So this will be expanded, but this is the first step the ISRO is taking to establish. And how does it work? 21 days. Then you may have to do long missions, which could be for months together. Like, for example, in International Space Station, people stay there for a large number of months, more than a year. So if it is so, then what the system itself has to be, life support system has to be also huge. So this expansion will happen, again, evolve as the requirement comes. This is the requirement of the manned space flight, which is Gaganyaan. But as we go further, more crews will be added, and then the capacity of these simulation stations have to change. And we may also have to simulate other conditions, like, for example, cosmic radiations. And because when you go into space, you have a huge, not only solar radiation, but you have other cosmic radiation. When there's a magnetic storm, there is an electromagnetic disturbance which flows down and then affects this. So whenever there are solar flares, magnetic storms, this is going to affect the International Space Station crew as well. So can we simulate those conditions as well? So there will be another challenge which will be coming there. Similarly, when you look at the magnetic field, like for example, southern pole of the lunar surface, the disturbance keeps occurring in the geomagnetic disturbance. So can you simulate in these chambers a geomagnetic disturbance if you want to study that? In Ladakh, particularly, you go to a place which is about 30 kilometers from Leh, that there is a the rock, which if you keep a vehicle, the vehicle automatically moves. You don't have to put it in, you just have to put it in neutral, and the car moves, not because of slope. There is no slope, planes. So magnet pulls this like this. So there is a place in Leh itself. So there you are creating a geomagnetic environment conditions. So we can use that. But this will also be different in different planetary situations. Right. Like in the southern part of the moon, when they landed, this was a big challenge for us. Similarly, for landing site, you want to test hyperspectral imaging to see which is the right place to land. Then these images will be occurring there. So you can simulate different kind of terrains in Ladakh itself. So Ladakh could be a good place to simulate many of these conditions, because in winter it will be very cold. So if you want to study in the southern pole, some parts are totally absent of sun. So the solar light doesn't fall at all. So it's very cold. So if you want to simulate such cold condition, also Ladakh is the most suitable. But you can have another station even in desert as well. And then how do you recover the people after they come back? So all this needs to be studied so you can simulate those conditions right in the simulated analog space stations.
Certainly. So this is just the first one. We hope that in the times to come, and because of the significance attached to it, they prepare us for the near term and the future term explorations. At the same time, they play a significant role in problem solving for space flight research. So this is something that of course ISRO has achieved a milestone in, but in the times to come, we are hoping there will be a permanent facility and the space sector in India will grow leaps and bounds. Thank you, Dr. Selvamurthy, for taking out time and joining us for this very, very informative episode of Perspective, and to Professor Raju as well. We lost connection and we couldn't reconnect with him, but we would love to have him in future on our programs as well. So thank you once again to both our guests for joining us on this edition of Perspective, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.